seventh episode of CloudFocus Weekly for the first week, September 2010. This episode titled Project Snowball. CloudFocus Weekly is sponsored by Arkus, cloud computing experts. I'm your host, Jason Atwood, and joining me right here in person is co-host Justin Elstein. Hey Justin, how you doing?
I'm doing great. This is fun. We turned our office into a recording studio.
Yeah, so the podcast and the Arkus offices have moved from being in
the garage,
to now being in a real office, and we have a brand new recording studio here, aka the Snowball mic, which is sitting between us right now. It is.
We're reviewing it as we speak.
Yes, it's good. It has a red light on the top of it. It's big and snowball-y, although it's black. Ours is the black model, not the white model, so it doesn't look much like a snowball.
We have the on-air light outside.
Yes. We're hoping no one busts into the office to ask us some crazy question. So we'll talk a little about our agenda today. Well, we're back, so that's a good thing. Justin, while I was away on vacation, did a great Google Voice within Gmail blog post. We'll talk about that. We have a little bit of Twitter news, some news about the free trials on App Exchange, some Apple Cloud news, if you will, a couple things that they're releasing that have effect on the cloud as in general, including a new social networks. And then we'll finish up with our CloudFocus app pick of the week, if I actually write mine in there.
Rolls right off the tongue.
It does. It comes back. So, we are back. That's the first thing off. Let's talk a bit about your blog post. What did you post when I was away?
Did you read it?
I, of course, read it because I commented on it before you posted it.
Oh, well, for all those who haven't read it, I wrote a column or a blog post, if you will, about Google and how they are striving to include everything productivity in Gmail, which makes a whole lot of sense. Gmail and email in general is sort of the hub of most people's productivity suite in general. You get to work, you open your email, you go home, you look at your email, you have your email on your phone, you pretty much do email everywhere, and that's where you keep your task list and your to-do items. And Google is making a big move to make Gmail the place where you do your work. They've taken the website, gmail.com, which when it launched was just sort of email, and turned it into a full-fledged, almost platform, if you will, where you can extend Gmail. They themselves, and the topic of this whole blog post was about the Gmail voice and chat, or voice and video chat, that is now enabled, where you can make free calls to anyone in the U.S. or Canada. And in a lot like Skype, they have, outgoing call rates for, pennies or 10 cents at a time, dimes at a time, to foreign nations, which is really interesting because they are, sitting on top of this, the bandwidth, the actual plug that you plug into the back of your computer or to your router to get Wi-Fi, and then are sort of skipping over the telephone company to actually make telephone calls through their service right from within your email client. So it's actually quite an interesting move, brings a whole lot of new features into Gmail and makes Gmail even more of a productivity suite.
Yeah, I mean, it moves away from Google Voice, which has always had some of these features. I think it's interesting to watch them, especially because if you've known the podcast for a while now, or read some, we're lamenting the fact that they're going to kill off Google Wave. But in this way, maybe this is showing us some of the path of what they're going to do with some of the technologies in Google Wave is move them in, take them, instead of having these separate things, you jump from Calendar to Gmail to Voice to Wave to Docs. I think the path is they're going to integrate them more and more, which I think is certainly interesting. It's funny because we are huge Gmail users, but I'm not a huge Gmail user because I don't actually go to the Gmail client at all. I use Mail on the Mac, so it's very rare that I go into actual Gmail. So I went in to test this feature, of course. I'm like, oh, look at all the neat stuff in here, and I turned off my out of office from Gmail, and I was impressed. Like, not only is it a great feature, start and end date, which is nice, and then when you log back in, it has it across the top. This is turned on. So I don't know, stuff that I guess I only thought about in Outlook as a long-term Outlook user. Seeing those features show up in Gmail was nice, and I was pleasantly surprised, and gives me some hope that Google Wave and its thing will come back and in some sort of way, either in Docs or Gmail.
They got to keep it around for something.
Yeah. So next thing is actually some little Twitter news. Twitter has done a couple of things in the last couple days. They're announcing two things, really, two big news announcements. One is that they're making all their applications go under OAuth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, it changes the way. But what are your immediate thoughts about them going through
immediately,
OAuth?
that to me is not a huge deal for the end user. Maybe for the developers that are listening, there might be some easier, better ways to connect your application or third-party app to Twitter. But to me, the more interesting news that they've come out with is the URL shortener, their new T.co,
right?
Which they've been testing for a little while and it has been out, but it's going to be essentially the standard for all apps that are connected to Twitter. So if you're using, any Seismic desktop or Hootsuite or Tweety, they're all going to be using T.co, which has some real implications for, folks like Bitly and all the other URL shorteners that are out there, because they've sort of made their nut on connecting themselves to Twitter. I mean, why else? No one goes to like Bitly to shorten an URL to then send it an email.
TinyURL. I actually did that the other day.
That?
On vacation, I put in because I'm super geek, so I went on a road trip, so I built out the road trip map, right, of where we were going, each destination, and then I wanted to send it to people. But when I went to do the send link, the link was literally this huge long link, so I went to TinyURL and shortened it to put it in the email because I wanted them to be able to get to the map link but not have it, because sometimes some mail clients change them and make them smaller, whether it's on the iPhone or maybe in mail, or they just don't get that it's too cut the URL. So I actually did that, and I
fair enough.
Yeah.
But the main use case for those URL shorteners is Twitter, to fit your long, enormous Amazon product or Google map
right
into a 140 character tweet with some commentary around
Yep.
it. That'll be interesting to see what happens to some of these URL shortening services and if they stay around, because a lot of them, even the Salesforce for Twitter product, uses a Bitly account to shorten URLs through Salesforce. When you're using that product, it'll be interesting now to see if that has to change or if it will just automatically change. Some of these companies might have a hard time existing moving forward because Twitter really is the main driver of those services.
Of certainly that of their URL shortening, but I know that Google's doing their own thing. They're going to come out with their own URL shortener because obviously, just like I was expressing, like I want someone to shorten it for me, and why shouldn't they do it? But there's still tons of social networks. I actually think it's more interesting that people are still sticking to the 140 characters, which was an SMS limitation originally. So you think, I don't know. I know it's now kind of like ubiquitous, except for Facebook, but almost everywhere. Like we've been playing around with Foursquare recently and checking in. I'm becoming a mayor of many, many places, including the Arkus office. But that's 140 characters as well. And they built it not a year ago or not 10 years ago. So people are sort of all social networks are sticking to that pattern that you have to be 140 characters. And here's Twitter who can basically, since they're building in their own URL shortener, why even include that in the 140 characters? Why not just include it as like a sub piece of the, like take the URL, shorten it down, but don't include it as part of the 140 characters?
No, that's crazy talk.
You know what I'm saying. It's like, why, if you're building it into your service, the reason it's an URL shortener is because you're putting it in the tweet. But if since the URL going into the tweet no longer is being taken over by their own service, why not just pull it out of the 140?
No.
Okay.
No, you can't do that.
All right. Well,
it's 140 characters. That's it.
This podcast should have been the social networking site because we have a lot of social news. But let's get off some social news and talk about a little Salesforce. As we know, we're big Salesforce guys here, so that's what we do for most of our days. Not so much I guess we do social networking as well. So Salesforce has released they've been kind of moving down this path. They first had the Aloha apps, which were ability to, let's back up. So Salesforce, software as a service, Force.com platform, CRM, and many other things. Then they have this thing called the App Exchange, where basically it's it's iTunes for business apps. So you
to use their marketing language.
I am. Well, it's a good way of putting it. You can, from your Salesforce, you can log into a marketplace, which has a lot of applications that you can install. You used to have trials, or sometimes they had
test drives.
But they also had different versions. Like I know Perio has 2 versions of things. One that's free, one that's pay, and they give you more features in the pay version. So they kind of have done this. It's kind of like actually iTunes in the App Store, where people will have the light version. But now they're allowing trials, real trials, which allows you to install these applications. And there's thousands of them. They do everything from mass emailing to action plans to Google integrations to full-on. One of our current partners does recruiting, job science.
Well, one of the keys here is this is a game changer for one reason and one reason only. You used to have a Salesforce instance or license to use Salesforce.com to go to the App Exchange and try something. These free trials, you don't have to be a Salesforce user. You can literally just go try an application, and they send you a login to their application, which is a fully set up and pre-configured version of this application sitting on top of Salesforce or Force.com.
So it's not a free trial in your org.
No, it's a free trial of an app. It's really for ISVs to go out and build a product, like Job Science, like you mentioned, but not own Salesforce whatsoever. Just go try Job Science. Forget the fact that it's even Salesforce.
So they're basically...
You go try it. It's got the configuration and sample data in it for you to play around with.
Nice.
And a login credential for you to play around with.
That is actually pretty good.
And then you can purchase from there.
I thought it was more, and I guess I didn't dig deep enough into it, but I thought it was more that you could try it in your org for a free period of time. But you're saying, so they basically give you, because Salesforce has the ability to you can sign up for a free trial of Salesforce. So now they're just basically combining the two.
Yep.
You get the free trial of Salesforce with the pre-installed packages. You don't have to do any work.
With some sample data.
That's relevant to the product?
That's right.
Well,
it's a pre-configured version of the product. So you really get to try before you buy a product built on top of the Force.com platform.
Right.
Which really makes it more like a true...
shareware.
Or a true product offering, as opposed to... being so tied to the hip with Salesforce, which you sort of are when you're building on top of their platform, but it makes it more like you can actually try this product even if you don't own Salesforce.
Right. That actually is interesting. So that's good. So, and the last thing actually happened yesterday, right? Which is, it's hard because everything is sort of cloud related and not cloud related at the same time. But since there is lots of talk about Apple and their movement to the cloud, they have cloud offerings like MobileMe, which actually is cloud storage and all sorts of interesting things, and syncing, which we both use. But so yesterday they announced a bunch of hardware. Boo, we don't care because it's not cloud specific. But the one thing that two things I think are interesting for us to discuss, one of which I've tried and one of which I ordered this morning, is they have a new Apple TV, which is, okay, so how is that cloud related? Well, they're much more moving to the model of everything's hosted. So you used to be able to download to your Apple TV, and I had actually upgraded mine to have a big disk in it so I could put a bunch of stuff on it. Now everything comes down from the cloud, from the iTunes store. You can rent movies, which you always could do, but you can rent TV shows, which you couldn't do. So the 99-cent HD TV shows. So I think it's actually very good. And it's smaller and there's no hard drive in it. I think what's interesting, that's kind of interesting, or that's kind of cloud news. What's even interesting is the new features they're going to put into it makes makes your your environment all one big network, and that you can be watching something on your iPad and then say, oh, I'm watching this movie. Let me just send this over to instantly while I'm watching it, send it over to my Apple TV. And then your iPad goes blank, your Apple TV starts up, and you're basically streaming it from any device to your Apple TV in real time at any point. So I think it's very cool. There's something that Apple's doing with this big data center in North Carolina. Maybe it's part of this, that they're scaling up, because if they're basically renting more and more movies, right, this thing's going to be $99. Again, I ordered mine this morning, $99. So it's a great point. They also do Netflix streaming, which is also, I think, huge, because a lot of us Netflix users don't like to switch to other devices to watch the same stuff. So I think that's big. Then on top of that, they released the new iTunes. Fine, iTunes. It's got new features and also neat stuff.
And in theory, they have this Netflix app.
Right.
It's an app on the thing, on the Apple TV, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing stopping. I mean, if they partnered with Apple, someone like Hulu, from selling an app on the Apple TV.
Well, there's no app store for the Apple TV. That was the big, and that's what everybody thought would happen. They do an app store, and you'd be able to buy apps.
Right,
this is just integrated, just like YouTube,
with like a Hulu app, because they have it on the iPad, don't they? If Apple were to partner with them.
Yes, but that's the problem. Is Apple's very specific. Without the app store, Apple's very specific about its partners. They've obviously done Flickr, Yahoo, and
it's kind of cool.
YouTube.
That brings the cloudiness to it, right? You don't have to have your photos on your computer. They could be up in Flickr.
Yep, that all works. Comes from MobileMe. That all works. But the second thing they released inside, which I think is much more interesting, and we'll see how it goes. I signed up this morning and played around with it this morning. Is their own social network? So they've kind of created. Apple's saying, listen, we've got however many iTunes users. I think it's like hundreds of millions.
Lots of millions.
Yeah. And we're going to create inside of iTunes our own social network. They're calling it Ping. My first connection was does it connect to other social networks? Did it connect to Twitter? Does it quit? It doesn't seem to. It seems to be captured within, which to me is a limitation, because I like when you can connect things, like when you connect Foursquare to Twitter to Facebook. Not all the time. I like the manual, like I want to do it now, but I don't want to do it tomorrow. But they... So it is basically, you have a profile, you have friends, you can follow people, you can follow, when you're playing music, you can have that music show up on your profile, so it's basically constantly telling you what you're doing, what you're liking. So I think that's kind of cool. So if you and I are connected, I'm listening to some music, and you go over to my profile, you say, oh, you're listening to whatever. Then
I got your invite this morning.
You got to log in. You got to do
that.
I
haven't upgraded to the new iTunes yet.
Okay.
So
well, you got to do that.
When I do that,
it'll be interesting. And then you could follow you could follow groups. So like Lady Gaga.
You can follow, like famous people, right?
But they're posting there too. So it's not just following their releases. It's following them actually posting.
And then what they're listening to.
And then what they're listening to.
It's sort of a super extension to those. Remember they used to have those like famous people playlists or whatever they were called?
Yep.
I never really downloaded them, but it was kind of...
I'd go look when they were first out there. I thought they were interesting, right? But this, it's kind of only big news because it's Apple and it's iTunes, which are so dominant now that it's like you can't not pay attention to it. I personally know with all the social networking now, it does become a little bit like, okay, where are we going? What am I doing now? Am I in Facebook? That's why I like the connecting of them, so that I don't have to too much worry. Am I over at Twitter? Am I Facebook? Am I Foursquare? Am I whatever? Am I in Ping now? And where am I updating this? But because it's very music, movie related, I could really see the movie TV thing becoming even more interesting than the music. Because to me, I listen to music in iTunes, but I watch a lot of movies and TV through iTunes, and it started to track that stuff, so you could see what movies I was watching or movies I had added. That to me gets a little bit more interesting.
The idea is that I would buy them because I saw that my friend was watching them
and liked them or rated them or reviewed them. Podcasts would be interesting. He could see if I rated or were listening to podcasts. So we'll have to see how that goes.
Yeah, we will.
All right. Well, we're getting closer to our end time here. So let's get on to the time, everything you've been waiting for. The CloudFocus app pick of the week. And because I always make you go first, I'm going to make you go first again.
You always make me go first. And I'm going to do sort of not really a specific app, but I like to follow Force.com Labs on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
It's twitter.com/force.com labs, all spelled out, DOTCOM labs. And they've been doing tons and tons of work lately. And recently there were a couple of cool apps that caught my eye that I thought were both cool and useful. They put out their own URL shortener. Speaking of URL shorteners,
Yep.
So you can actually use a native Force.com URL shortener to use with a site. So if you have a branded Salesforce site, you can use that URL to sort of shorten URLs. Anything that you want to point to, you can point to it using, and they use it to post all their apps. You notice their apps are like Force.com/survey, which is another one that I was going to talk about,
right.
which is their new native survey app. A lot of people need or want to do surveys within Salesforce to their customers or to for customer service or clients or post-implementation of something for services organizations. So there's a native survey app now built on sites. I just started playing with it in a developer org. It's kind of interesting and fun. It's customizable enough to really get the job done. So
how much does it cost?
It's cost free.
Ooh, free.
And they also put out an update to the Salesforce for Twitter. So there's the new one. I started playing with the new one when they came out with it, version 2, and it didn't work so well. So they updated it, and now it works. So good on them.
Nice. So that's Force.com Labs, lots of stuff. You have an URL shortener, you have a survey app, and
an integrated Twitter app for Salesforce.
Nice.
All for free.
That's $0
From the App Exchange.
From the App Exchange. AppExchange.com.
Tie it all together. URL shorteners and App Exchange.
There you go.
Tying it all together into a tight little snowball.
Project Snowball. Good, that's good. So mine's going to be something that actually came out this morning, related right back into Twitter. So, little history. There used to be an app called Tweety, done one of the best iPhone apps.
The best.
Close. I don't know. I think it's very good. And Tweety was then bought by Twitter, and they had Twitter. They had an iPhone app, but they didn't have an iPad app. So this morning, as I checked, as I often do in the morning, just click on see if there's anything new. Up came the new version of Twitter, renamed from Tweety, which is now universal for the iPhone and the iPad and the iPod Touch.
Nice.
And it is really nice because not only does it still work on the iPhone, just like it always did, great, right? On the iPad, it does this layering effect. So when you're on, you basically can look at a person or look at your feed. Here's your feed. Then you click on a mention, and you click on the URL, and it kind of overlays on top of it, like the website or whatever. So it doesn't take you out of context. It leaves you right in context.
You
can expand it.
Of apps. That's very
and then
cool.
You can it's really done well. And so if you go to the profile, it overlays that a little bit. I was playing it with the one way. I didn't have a lot of time this morning, but I'm sure if you flipped it the other way, it would do it as well. Really well done, really beautifully designed, and it's universal, so it runs on both, and it's free. And I love universal apps, and I even more love, so to keep our sort of social networking thing, that is Twitter for the iPad or a universal app, iPod Touch, and iPhone from iTunes, now owned by Twitter. So nice to know they're actually keeping up and building new apps. So that's it. That's the podcast. Welcome back, buddy. Wait.
Welcome you back. What do you mean?
I was the one that was away. So if you're interested in this and more of this type of conversation, we'd love for you to follow us on Twitter. You can follow the company, Arkus, at twitter.com/Arkus Inc. That's ARKUSINC. If you want to follow me, Jason, I'm at twitter.com JasonMAtwood. And Justin is at twitter.com/JustEdelstein. You can find all this on the website, which is at ArkusInc.com. We have a blog, which is blog.arkusinc, and there's Facebook. Jeez, we're everywhere. Facebook.com/arkusinc. Go there, and we post the podcast. Really, if you really like the podcast, you want to listen to it on your new Apple TV, subscribe to it in iTunes. That's a really great way to do it, because then you get the version. It comes down. Leave a nice review there if you would. We have to scrub up some more reviews as the days go. But that's it for this week. Thank you for joining CloudFocus Weekly. Remember, until next time, enjoy those cloudy days.